Steve McQueen once wrote a letter to a family in New Jersey, begging to buy back the Mustang he drove in Bullitt. They said no. That car later disappeared into their garage for 37 years. Its twin, the stunt car, one serial number away, was declared scrap and turned up half a century on in a Mexican backyard, about to be cut up for parts. One sold for almost $4 million. The other went on display just weeks ago. Two cars, 50 years, and almost none of it happened the way the internet tells it. To understand how two identical machines ended up living two completely different lives, you have to start where they did. San Francisco, spring of 1968, on the set of a cop movie that nobody expected to change anything. Warner Brothers needed two Mustangs for Bullitt because the script called for a car chase unlike anything ever filmed, and no single car was going to survive it. Ford supplied a pair of Highland Green 1968 Mustang GT 390 fastbacks with consecutive serial numbers, both S-code cars, big block 390s with 4-speed manuals. Whether the studio bought them outright or Ford provided them under a promotional deal is one detail history never settled, and we won't pretend otherwise. What matters is what happened to them. The one ending in 59 would be the hero car, the one Steve McQueen drove on camera. The one ending in 58 would be the jump car, the one that took the punishment. The man who prepared them was Max Balchowski, a legendary Los Angeles hot rodder. He milled the heads, reworked the carburetor and ignition, and opened up the exhaust. Then he built the cars to survive, reinforced shock towers, heavy-duty springs, Coney shocks, and a belly pan, because these Mustangs were going to land jumps at 70 miles an hour on San Francisco pavement. The look, on the other hand, was McQueen's own call. He had the badges and trim stripped and the grille blacked out until the car looked like something a working detective might actually own. The villain's side of the garage got a different treatment. Bill Hickman picked up two Chargers from a Dodge dealer in Glendale, and here is the first thing the legend gets wrong, and it makes the movie better, not worse. Those Chargers received almost none of Balchowski's attention. Their engine stayed essentially stock, and the stock Charger was faster. A chase driver later admitted in a 1987 interview that they had to keep backing off the accelerator because the 440 Charger kept pulling away from the hot-rodded hero car. The most famous chase in movie history is a Mustang struggling to keep up. One of those Chargers died on camera in the fiery gas station finale. What became of the other is its own unsolved story, and its trail is too thin to tell honestly, so we won't. The second thing the legend gets wrong is who was driving. The studio's insurance men kept McQueen out of the most dangerous shots. Bud Ekins, the same stuntman who made the famous motorcycle fence jump in The Great Escape, drove the Mustang for the airborne runs down Taylor Street. Stuntman Lauren Janes doubled McQueen too, though exactly how much is still argued about. Bill Hickman, who plays the bespectacled hitman on screen, did every foot of the Chargers driving himself. Kerry Lofton coordinated the stunts and handled the Mustang for the gas station finale. McQueen drove plenty, and to prove it, he did something wonderful. On camera, he deliberately hung his head out the window while reversing, so every person in the theater could see exactly who was behind the wheel. Keep that image. McQueen, proud of this car, making sure the world saw him in it. Nearly a decade from that moment, he will be writing a letter to a stranger in New Jersey, begging for this same car, and he will lose. Peter Yates refused to hand the chase to a second unit and directed it himself. They rehearsed for about 2 weeks at an old raceway in Cotati, 45 miles north of the city, running over 100 miles an hour. Then they shot for roughly 3 weeks across 30 square blocks of San Francisco, with 50 crew members coordinating on walkie-talkies and 8 stuntmen on call. Director Peter Yates asked for maybe 75 or 80 miles an hour. What he got at times was over 110 on real public streets, with no trick photography and no sped-up film. All of that work produced one sequence lasting under 11 minutes, and the flat-out pursuit inside it runs 9 minutes and 42 seconds. The chase is also full of little accidents the crew simply left in, and fans have been cataloging them for half a century. The Charger sheds more hubcaps than the 4 it actually carries, because the crew kept reinstalling them between takes. Count them across the chase, and you get anywhere from 5 to 8, depending on who's counting. That green Volkswagen Beetle that keeps reappearing, it was a control car planted by the crew to pace traffic, which is why you keep seeing it. And the famous silence during the chase, no music, just engines and tires. That wasn't McQueen's demand, whatever the retellings say. Composer Lalo Schifrin himself suggested cutting his own score because the sound of the cars was better than anything he could write over it. The director agreed. One more piece of the record, because you may hear that there was a third Mustang. One stuntman claimed it for years. The car's later owner traced that story to something simpler. The hero car was freshened up after filming for promotional work, and its second appearance got remembered as a second car. 2 Mustangs. That's the count the serial numbers support. The chase became the standard every action film has been measured against since, and then came the part nobody thinks about. The cameras stopped, and the studio was left holding 2 used Mustangs it no longer needed. What happened next split their fates for 50 years. Start with the lucky one. In 1968, neither car was treated as anything special because used movie props rarely are. The hero car went to a Hollywood body shop called Precision Auto Body for repairs and paint. The bill survives, $920.16. Then Warner Brothers sold it to one of its own employees, a man named Robert Ross. In 1970, the car changed hands again, this time to Frank Maranka, a New Jersey police detective, who had it shipped across the country by rail. Somewhere on that train ride, someone stole the shift knob and the wooden steering wheel. Maranka's purchase paperwork included something remarkable, a letter from Ford certifying that this exact serial number had been bought by Solar Productions, Steve McQueen's own company, for the movie. And savor the detail, a real detective owned the movie detective's car. That part of the story is true. It just gets attached to the wrong family in most retellings. By 1974, Maranka had a growing family and needed a station wagon. He bought a Chevrolet Vega wagon for his wife, and to fund it, he placed a classified ad in the back pages of the October 1974 issue of Road and Track. The ad misspelled the movie's name. It read, 1968 Bullitt Mustang, driven by McQueen in the movie, can be documented, best offer. Think about that for a moment. The actual car from the most famous chase ever filmed, advertised in the classifieds with a spelling mistake, 6 years after the movie. By most accounts, exactly one person answered. Robert Kiernan was an insurance executive from Madison, New Jersey. He paid $6,000, the figure in the family's own records, though some accounts put it lower, for a green fastback with about 19,000 miles on it. And then the most famous Mustang in the world simply became a family car. His wife Robbie, a school teacher, drove it to work every day. The family would put another 46,000 miles on it, groceries and school runs and commutes, in a car collectors would one day fly across the country just to look at. Robbie's one recorded complaint about owning a piece of Hollywood history. The Bullitt likes to drink the gas. Then, in 1977, the telephone rang. Steve McQueen had found them. Imagine answering that call, the biggest movie star of his generation, the man whose face was on the poster, asking for his car back. The Kiernans said no. So, McQueen tried paper. So, on December 14th, 1977, McQueen put it in writing, on his production company's letterhead. The letter still exists, and it is politer and sadder than you'd expect. Again, I would like to appeal to you to get back my '68 Mustang, he wrote. I would like very much to keep it in the family in its original condition as it was used in the film, rather than have it restored, which is simply personal with me. He offered to find them another Mustang, if it didn't cost too much. And then the last line, otherwise, we had better forget it. Bob Kiernan never even wrote back. 2 years after turning down Steve McQueen, Robbie gave her husband an anniversary present, a set of vanity plates reading B-U-L-I-T-T. They went on the car. The family had made its decision, and the decision was that this was their Mustang now. McQueen died in November 1980, 3 years after writing that letter, still without his car. And that same year, the car itself began to disappear. The clutch gave out in 1980 at 65,000 miles. The odometer still reads 65,055 because from that day the Bullitt Mustang never drove another mile under the Kiernans' ownership. It just followed them. silently from garage to garage. For collectors, the question of where the Bullitt Mustang went became the hobby's favorite unsolved mystery. The answer, the whole time, was that it was following a family around the country. New Jersey to Cincinnati in 1984, when the insurance company transferred Bob, then a friend's place in Kentucky, then a farm outside Nashville that Bob named Wicklow Hill. It crossed half of America under a cover, never once on the road, while journalists kept declaring it lost forever. And notice what nobody was doing in all those years. Nobody was hunting its twin. Why would they? The record said the jump car no longer existed. Hollywood found them one more time. When the Charlie's Angels movie was in production, a producer wrote that the actress Drew Barrymore desperately wanted the original Bullitt car for the film. Bob refused Hollywood a second time. There was no amount of fame the car could be traded for, because it wasn't for trade. What finally moved him wasn't money. In 2001, Ford released a Bullitt tribute Mustang, and Bob had just retired. Father and son decided to bring the real one back to life together. They took the car apart, planning the restoration as a shared project. Then life intervened, the way it does. Bob was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. The project slowed, then stalled. Though when Ford's second Bullitt edition came out in 2008, they did get the original engine rebuilt, a small step on a project that kept receding. The parts stayed boxed and labeled, waiting. Sean tells it without bitterness. He never let the Parkinson's slow him down. He bought a 2008 Mustang GT with a stick. Robert Kiernan died in 2014. The car he refused to sell to Steve McQueen was still in pieces in the garage. And here the story should simply end, twice over. One Bullitt Mustang in boxes in Tennessee, known only to a grieving family. The other one gone for decades, written off as crushed, with not one photograph or document to say otherwise. Instead, both cars were about to come back, and the second resurrection started in the last place on Earth anyone was looking. A backyard at the tip of Baja, California. In late 2016, a man named Hugo Sanchez paid about $5,000 for two rotting Mustangs sitting behind a house near Los Cabos, Mexico. One was a coupe. The other was a white fastback with no engine and no transmission. His plan was the kind that makes collectors wince today. Cut both cars up and merge them into one replica of Eleanor, the silver Mustang from Gone in 60 seconds. For a while, nobody involved had any idea what they were holding. The white fastback was reportedly even offered around as a bare shell, a junk body looking for a buyer. There were no takers. Then Sanchez took both cars to Ralph Garcia Jr., who runs a body shop in Mexicali and builds Eleanor replicas professionally, reportedly for a customer back in the States. And there, before the cutting started, somebody did the one thing that saved the car. They looked up the serial number stamped into that white fastback. It ended in 58, $5,000, for a pair of junk cars that turned out to include one of the most famous Mustangs ever built, the jump car. The Mustang that took the beating in the greatest chase ever filmed, the car the record said had been sent to a wrecking yard and crushed almost 50 years earlier. A single search of a serial number was the only thing standing between it and a cutting wheel. By March 2017, the news had gone around the world and onto national television. The Bullitt car everyone had written off as crushed was alive. Kevin Marty, the man who maintains Ford's production records, traveled to Mexicali to examine it, checking the car's stampings and date codes against the Ford and Warner Brothers paperwork. The proof was written all over it. The serial stampings in the engine bay and the reinforced shock towers from Balchowski's build. The Mexico years had left their own marks too, replaced floor pans, a replaced roof, an interior that was mostly gone. But the identity was beyond argument, and on the door, something almost poetic. The data plate had been painted over twice, and the layers came off like tree rings. White on top, red underneath, and at the bottom, the original Highland green. Those three coats of paint are the only record of the car's missing half-century that exists. How a written-off movie car traveled from a Los Angeles scrapyard to the tip of Baja, California, nobody knows. There are theories, and there is a temptation every storyteller faces to fill 50 silent years with drama. The honest answer is 3 coats of paint and nothing else. There is no paperwork, no photographs, no witnesses, And we're not going to invent a story where there isn't one. By most accounts, it was Balkowski himself who had judged the car too far gone to ever be road legal again. Somewhere between that verdict and that backyard lie 50 years that may never be explained. Sanchez and Garcia dropped the Eleanor plan on the spot, became equal partners, and committed to bringing the jump car back exactly as it appeared in the film. And while their secret sat in a Mexicali body shop, 1,800 miles away in Tennessee, a son was keeping a secret of his own. After his father's death, Sean Kiernan made a decision. He would finish what they had started, alone, in the same garage where they had taken the car apart together. He first let the secret out in December 2015 to his boss. Then, from January to May of 2016, he reassembled the Bullitt Mustang piece by piece, the way he and his dad had planned to do it together. Then he made a phone call. In the spring of 2016, Kevin Marty signed a non-disclosure agreement and flew to Atlanta fully expecting to expose a fake. He walked over and looked at the VIN on the tag, and in his own words, my emotions flipped from skepticism to, oh my God, it's real. And note the timing because it's the part almost nobody realizes. Atlanta happened months before anyone found the other car in Mexico, which means that when Kevin Marty later walked into that shop in Mexicali and confirmed the jump car, he became the only expert on Earth to have authenticated both lost Bullitt Mustangs, and he was still sworn to secrecy about the first one. The whole world was celebrating the return of one Bullitt. Marty knew both had come back, and he couldn't say a word until Detroit. Back in Atlanta, the evidence had been hiding in plain sight for 40 years. 3 welded tubes under the rocker panels, mounts for the movie's camera rigs, holes cut in the trunk for generator cables, tape residue on the tachometer where the crew had marked the shift points, and in the passenger door, an estimated 40 gallons of body filler, packed into damage the car took during filming. Marty's verdict? 98% of the original car is there. It's an incredible artifact. On the 4th of July, 2017, the engine fired for the first time in 37 years. An American movie car, waking up on Independence Day. Nobody scripted that. It's simply the date it happened. Historians came to the family farm in September 2017 to document the car for the National Historic Vehicle Register, where it became the 21st vehicle ever added, a list reserved for the machines America has decided matter to its history, with its file archived in the Library of Congress. And on January 14, 2018, if 50 years after the film, Sean Kiernan pulled the cover off his father's car at the Detroit Auto Show, next to Ford's brand new Bullitt Mustang, with Steve McQueen's granddaughter Molly standing beside the car her grandfather could never get back. Sean also found his own way to honor his father. He later auctioned Bullitt replica cars to raise money for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which funds research into the disease that took Bob's last years. The unrestored paint, the scars, the odometer still frozen at 65,055. Sean had honored the exact wish McQueen wrote in that 1977 letter, original condition, never restored, kept in the family. Just not McQueen's family, which left only the question Bob Kiernan had answered with silence back in 1977. What was this car actually worth? The announcement came in August 2019. The Bullitt Mustang would be the very first consignment for Meekham's Kissimmee auction the following January. And Sean Kiernan made a decision that tells you everything about how the family did things. No reserve. The car would sell on January 10th, 2020, no matter what the final number was. The bidding opened at $3,500. That number was not an accident. It was a wink at the old story of what the family had paid back in 1974. The room understood, and then it erupted. Bidding passed $3 million inside the first minute. When the hammer finally fell, the price was $3.4 million, $3.74 million with fees, paid by a phone bidder who has never been publicly identified. At that moment, it was the most expensive Mustang ever sold at auction. The record lasted about 6 months. In July 2020, the 1965 Shelby GT 350R prototype that Ken Miles flew over the fences of American racetracks sold for $3.85 million. And that same car brought nearly the same money again 2 years later. The Bullitt car doesn't need the crown. It has the story. One correction for the road, because retellings keep handing this car to a New Jersey detective. The detective was Frank Maranka, the previous owner. The family that actually kept it for more than 4 decades was an insurance man's and a school teacher's. And the jump car got its ending too, just weeks ago. Ralph Garcia's shop spent nearly a decade rebuilding it with original specification parts, chasing down the last pieces so stubbornly that at the unveiling, Garcia admitted the car was still only 95% where he wanted it. The press saw it on June 3rd, 2026, at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. The public got its first look at the museum's Detail Fest on June 20th. The jump car in Highland Green again, 58 years after being written off as scrap. Even the piece of it that couldn't be saved found a second life. A section of its ruined taillight panel was cut into fragments and sealed inside a limited run of 1,486 wristwatches at about $4,500 apiece. 2 cars, 1 serial number apart. One sold for millions wearing its original scars, and one brought back from the dead by the people who nearly cut it apart. Now, here's the thread that holds this whole story together. Nobody famous saved these cars. Ford didn't save them. Warner Brothers didn't save them. Steve McQueen himself, with all his money and all his charm, couldn't get one back with a personal letter. An insurance man from New Jersey said no to a movie star. And a school teacher drove the prize to work with vanity plates on it. A body shop owner in Mexicali looked up a serial number before he started cutting. That's it. That's the entire difference between this story and a crushed car and a forgotten legend. Ordinary people deciding a thing mattered. 2 families, decades apart. One refused to sell, not to anyone, not even to the man who made the car famous. The other nearly destroyed a legend by accident, then spent 10 years making it whole again. Neither was supposed to be part of this story. Both ended up being the point of it. The record books say the Bullitt Mustang is worth $3.74 million. The letter in the Kiernan family's files says Steve McQueen once offered to trade them a similar Mustang for it, if there is not too much money's involved. Both of those numbers are real. Only one of them was ever going to win. And somewhere out there, an anonymous phone bidder owns the most famous Mustang in the world, and in more than 6 years has never said a word. Maybe that's fitting. This car was always at its best when nobody knew where it was. The story may still have one chapter left. If you want more cars with stories they never should have survived, we made a whole video about the machines somebody decided you were never supposed to drive. It's on your screen now.